I made up a resume that was 100% false. I probably did 300 auditions where I was told I should look for a different profession, I'm no good. And then I walked into the Goonies audition and I was just at the right place at the right time.
What did they see? What was the best price you thought you might be able to get a Russian submarine for?
Russian submarine. That was, that's good, man. Nobody's ever brought that up. There's no part of me that is kind of victimized by this whole story.
Yeah.
But when somebody's living this vividly, when somebody's living at this kind of high octane life, don't you want to be around that? There's something about being 56 where you find your own voice.
Yeah.
I don't know how old you
58.
are. There you go.
Yeah.
You hit your 50s and you kind of go, you know what? I don't care anymore. Brando was the reason I became an actor.
What's it like being with him at dinner?
Amazing, because he's so normal. And then something happened at 45 where I said, I will actively pursue on a daily basis a better day than my greatest romance of what drinking was.
Yeah.
And that's when it all changed.
Yeah.
I was like, I can be more punk rock sober than I ever was as a drinker.
Yeah. The man is here. And goodness me, when he woke up this morning, he looked out the window and he thought, it's just like being back in Los Angeles. Or maybe not. Who am I talking about, Vassal?
He's the Oscar-nominated actor who might just be the most Hollywoody, least Hollywoody guest we've ever had. His new memoir from Under the Truck is out now. So join us as we go. Brolin. It's Josh Brolin.
How are you, Josh?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Oh, my God, what a book, man.
Thanks, man.
Seriously, crazy book.
Thank you. You read the book, which I love.
I read it inside and out and back to front and upside down.
You said this was going to be the anti-Rogan thing because Rogan didn't read the book.
He didn't read the book, but actually he didn't get the book.
But he did now. He finally read the book.
You still had a great chat with him. Josh Brolin from Under the Truck. It's called From Under the Truck because if you're under the truck, you're either fixing it or you're getting run over by it. And that's how Josh sort of sums up his life thus far. 56 years young, still going strong, stronger than ever, Josh Brolin. It's a book very much about your mum, isn't it?
It happened to turn out that way. I don't think that's what was intended, but I probably doubled that size, 450 pages or something. And then as I started editing, what was left was a lot of other stuff. I don't know. It's a very Oedipal kind of strange
Oh, my goodness
deal.
me. Just to get people in, because they haven't read the book. What was the most amount of money your mum brought home from who knows where in carrier bags for you to count as a kid?
Great question. She used to bring home bags of money. She was one of the top winners of the pyramid scheme, the first pyramid scheme back in the day. And she would literally bring in bags of money. She would pour them in front of me. And then I was the counter
So
at
how old
8
were
or
you?
9, 8, 9, 10.
And what was the most
9.
amount of cash, hard cash, that you counted that your mum brought home?
50 grand.
$50,000?
Yeah. 50 grand.
What?
50 grand. I mean, when you're, I think they were 20s, and I said that she used to keep a 9mm, a loaded 9mm, because it became obvious that she was on a hit list. And she was third on that hit list when they finally found the people. They didn't kill people, but they beat them up, and she was number 3, and the first 2 had been beat up.
But she could pretty much talk her out of anything. She could drink almost
anybody under the table.
Everybody under the table. Her favorite drink was what?
Calypso coffee. Coffee, light rum, Tia Maria with a little whipped cream on top.
Some kind of... You're a pretty... I've been saying all morning, you're one of the wild men of Hollywood and you've written a wild book, but...
What did you say? The most Hollywood and the least Hollywood?
Yeah, the most Hollywoody, least Hollywoody.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
But your mum, she wrote the book, didn't she, herself?
Yeah.
Was she a casting director?
She was. She was assistant casting director for the series Batman. And that's where she met my dad, because he did an episode. I think he did a couple of episodes, but he did an episode of Batman.
Okay, but she very much ruled the roost.
She did.
And where did she get it from, this chutzpah?
I don't know, man, because I heard about her parents, and they were really mild-mannered. They both worked at Del Mar College. They were both teachers. See, even she says, they didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't like she grew up in this awful household. They were really, really nice, mellow parents.
So it was just in her.
Yeah,
it was just her character.
That's I think the whole book is about that, nature, nurture.
Yeah, and could I say you're half and half? Your mum and dad literally split down the middle, would you say? More your mum?
I would say.
Much more your mum?
I think my brother's more my dad. I'm more my mom.
All right.
Yeah.
And your bro, I mean, there's different ways of dealing with things that happen to you. And your bro sort of went, not the opposite way, but pretty much sort of 270 degrees.
He just simplified his life. I mean, he's got a job. He walks to his job. He does his thing. He goes to his coffee shop. He goes and gets a sandwich and he comes home. It's just a very simple life.
And you went for the full catastrophe instead.
I went for the catastrophe. I did. It's more interesting to me.
Oh my gosh. Josh Brolin on his wild life. This is in the Times, one of our sister products here at the top of the news tower. Weed at 9, LSD at 13, jail 9 times. I described you on Tuesday on the air to get people hooked into the interview today as the most arrested man in Santa Barbara. Now, that may or may not be true.
I don't know.
But you'll be in the top 100 there. So you were brought up in Santa Barbara. There was a ranch. There was the Cito Rats. Tell us about the Cito Rats.
Yeah, the ranch is about 2 hours above Santa Barbara. So it was a place that I was raised called Paso Robles, where I ended up raising my older kids. Different ranch. But then we moved to Santa Barbara when I was 11. Santa Barbara's not really farming community. A little bit of a horse community, but yeah.
It's quite fancy, isn't it, Santa Barbara?
Now.
Yes.
Then no.
All right, so the Cito Rats were your gang of mates, and you either had rich parents and that messed you up, or you didn't have any parents around and that messed you up. So you're all sort of...
It wasn't rich parents that were present, and then poor kids that had poor parents that weren't present.
Right.
None of them were present.
Okay, so and that was your common
Which
narrative.
we think about now. We think about, remember back in the 70s when your kids kind of did what they wanted to do?
Latchkey kids.
Yeah, exactly, which is a positive.
Yeah.
I just think this was an extreme version of it.
It went the other way.
Yeah, they just kind of, parents were just doing, it was more about kind of narcissistic tendencies.
All right, and the Cito Rats, were you an official gang? Because there's some of the names in there are crazy names, man.
No, they're great names. I don't know a lot of those guys' real names. I still don't know a lot of those guys' real names, but it was not an official gang. There were different surf cultures. If you look on the internet, there's Dahui in Hawaii, there's Wolfpack in Kauai, there's Bra Boys in Maruba.
Z-Boys as well?
Z-Boys would be
Z-Boys.
one of them. N-Men, which was Sacramento. It's just different guys, that skated and surfed and all that kind of stuff, and we were the Cito Rats.
Okay, so Cito Rats, here we go. Foolish Mortal, Herb, Dead Ted, No Hands Dan, Bomber, Bohawk, Wilmo, T-Roll, The Other JB, Twisty Mole, Moz, Friend of Fat,
Chick.
Hydro, Scott Doobie, T-Shaver, Hawk Zane, Wookie Man.
Yeah.
All of these were arrested at one point or another, I would imagine?
Oh, everybody. Yeah. For sure. T-Roll's still around.
Okay. And you say out of the 50 or 60 guys, there wouldn't be less than half still alive today?
For sure.
Wow.
That's 100%.
Oh my goodness me! So
I mean, it was an epidemic. There was the craziness. There was this kind of chaotic vortex that we grew up in. So you got people that got in accidents or maybe drinking accidents, whatever, and then you had the heroin epidemic, and a lot of those guys died from the heroin.
All right,
epidemic.
so Dad was an actor, Mum was a casting director of sorts.
For a little while.
But such a huge character. She lived her life was a movie.
Absolutely.
She was one of those, wasn't she?
Absolutely. You know how many people, and I've never even thought about it, but have read this book and said, God, you should make this into a movie. Have you thought about it? Because it's a great character. That's the thing, is there's the negative, which there's no part of me that is kind of victimized by this whole story.
Yeah.
But when somebody's living this vividly, when somebody's living at this kind of high octane life, don't you want to be around that?
Yeah, it's the roller coaster, isn't it? It's the dynamics. It's
great.
For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, that's a dynamic life that sometimes has to be. We dramatize the normal to make it interesting.
Totally.
But some people live in such a dynamic way. If you filmed it, if you told other people about it, they wouldn't believe it.
That's right.
They'd say you couldn't write it,
right? Because
some stories you can't write, you can only live.
That's right.
Your book is written like I read hundreds of biographies for my job, and I love it.
Okay,
I've never read a book like this.
Really? That's a good thing.
Never.
Do you like the writing?
I love it, man.
Good.
And
it's funny because some people, it's very few. Every reaction that I've gotten for this book has been positive. It's been emotional. But a couple of people are like, what is that? Because they expect the typical biography. They go, I want to know what you did during Young Riders and Thrashing, and I want to know the professional trajectory. This is some of that, But
it's punk. It's a breath of fresh air.
It's punk. Is
It's
that
punk.
what you said?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what it is, man.
I like
And
it.
so first chapter, 1980s, second chapter, early 2000s, and then we have some first-person stuff, and then we have some poetry, and then we have sort of mini short stories, and we have you speaking about yourself, writing about yourself in the third person. Yeah. It comes across that you're a massive fan of Hunter S. Thompson and Dylan Thomas and Ernest Hemingway, and they would not be disappointed, my friend, with their young student.
Thank you very much for saying that.
But you don't mention Charles Bukowski, and I'm thinking, there's got to be some Bukowski in your life.
There's Bukowski. There's all these influences, but there's. I think there comes a point. I think that's why it's nice that it's 56. Somebody got this book. They took a picture with me in Austin, Texas, and they looked at me and they go, "You're too young for a memoir." Which I love that he said that. I don't know why he chose just to say that, but there's something about being 56 where you find your own voice.
Yeah.
I don't know how old you
58.
are. There you go.
Yeah.
You hit your 50s and you kind of go, you know what? I don't care anymore.
Apparently.
Like, I'm going to want to sound like Hunter S. Thompson. I want to sound like Dylan Thomas because I want people to like me and I want people to like my writing. And then finally you just go, this is me. This is what it is.
Yeah.
Put it out into the world.
Yeah.
Is it better for it? Is it worse for it? I don't know. Do I care? This is just my deal. This is how I see things.
Well, without wanting to get too writery nerdy about it, I can't help myself here because, of course, the Hunter S. Thompsons and the Hemingways of this world found their voice early when they also didn't care and then lost their life too soon to get back to where we are now.
That's what I didn't want to do.
And that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, because a lot of those guys didn't get, sober and that whole idea of sobriety just was awful to them. It was like an imprisoning to them, and they did their best writing. Dylan Thomas, up until he was maybe 25, 28, was genius. Yeah. And then what? Then he spent the rest of his time in the bar.
All scientists, literally all scientists who attain any kind of renown only do it pre their 30th birthday. It is impossible for them to do it after that.
Is that true?
So, yeah. Because something happens to them and nothing amazing or very few things amazing have been discovered scientifically by scientists over 30.
I mean,
don't get me wrong, we'll get loads of people saying this, that and the other, but I'm talking about the rock stars.
Yeah, a good friend, which I'm happy to say, the one name I'm happy to drop is Cormac McCarthy. Yeah. And he was involved in the Santa Fe.
Just tell people who he is.
Cormac McCarthy is one of the greatest American writers of our time for sure, or maybe of all time. Yeah. And he wrote Blood Meridian, he wrote No Country for Old Men, he wrote All the Pretty Horses, some great books, The Road, which he won the Pulitzer for. Anyway, he was involved in the Santa Fe Institute, and I would want to talk about writing, and writing is the last thing he would want to talk about. He only wanted to talk about his involvement in the science of the Santa Fe Institute. But to think that all those guys, before 30, they're making their great discoveries. Yeah. Which is strange because all those guys were old. Yeah. So I don't know.
Did you buy his table?
No, I bought his pool table.
You boys, but you wanted to buy his writing table. Tell people this story.
No, there is no writing table because what he had a typewriter that he used for probably 25 novels. Yeah. And he would keep that typewriter on just an old piece of wood at the foot of his bed, and he would write in his bed. I don't know where his writer's desk is, but I did get his couch. And it wasn't one of those things. There's a story in there that kind of calls me out and going, oh, I want the couch because what? It validates me, or it makes me a better writer, or I want Bukowski's pen, or I want Dylan Thomas's, Kleenex, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But I did, just because I've been talking with his brother. He said, do you want anything of Cormac's? I said, what do you want to give me? And I got the pool table, the couch, and a few pieces of furniture. Nice. I like having it close. I like having it near.
I was going to talk to you about memorabilia because you're on Joe Rogan's show and you like Joe's memorabilia because it's inspirational. I like to surround my stuff with things that were around when magic was happening, and maybe therefore have magic in them. Do you know that kind of stuff? Do you have any other stuff that you've bought?
I have Ralph Steadman, which I talked about on Rogan. Ralph Steadman gave me a piece that he signed himself, a print. What else do I have? I have Cormac's typewriter that I was given almost right away after his death.
Let's talk more about what's in it. So, what's it like hanging out with Marlon Brando?
Marlon Brando's Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
But you've been with him.
If you've been an actor for 40 years, and especially when you're young and you're looking, Brando was the reason I became an actor. So when you look at Streetcar Named Desire, you look at the water on the waterfront, and you see him pick up that glove, and he does this thing that you've never seen in acting before.
Yep.
It's great.
No, I know that, but what's it like being with him at dinner?
Amazing, because he's so normal. He's so normal, and all you do is read stories about how abnormal he is.
Yeah.
And then he goes, "Hey, man."
So what's yeah, no, by the way, yes. And
none of these geniuses want to talk about what they do.
I know.
That's what's so wild. Cormac doesn't want to talk about writing. Brando doesn't want to talk. But we did ask Brando about, like, hey, what was it like working on Streetcar? What was it like?
So, and
I think he fell asleep.
he did. You talk about going to dinner with him, and then in another chapter, you talk about going to a dinner with someone who you talked about streetcars and waterfronts.
Same.
And obviously, you're
Very
referring
good.
back to
You
him.
picked it up.
Yeah.
You picked it up.
Of course I did. And other people as well. There are lots of stories, great stories, where
That story, sorry to interrupt, that story is me calling myself out for name dropping.
Yeah.
And that story was a very simple story about me and Sam Shepard out at breakfast, and he told me about a book that had just come out that day called No Country for Old Men, and that I should go read it.
Wow.
Me trying to impress him.
Where do we go? We can go anywhere because the book goes everywhere. So we're jumping around in the interview. So Goonies was big. Goonies was massive. How'd you get the gig? What happened in between? Give us the headlines of that. And also, I want to know about trading stocks.
Trading stocks, I'll tell you about
But that
later.
doesn't get much copy. It gets enough to get me intrigued.
Yeah, good.
Go on, over to you. Whatever you like.
Okay, so the Goonies, I got kicked out of my house in Santa Barbara by my mom. I probably would have gone back right away, but it was an opportunity to kind of get my life together. Things were going downhill. I was involved with these guys. I was at the epicenter of it. I went and slept on my dad's couch. I made up a resume that was 100% false about theaters that I had done plays in and all that. Thank you very much. And then I went and I got an agent, and there was only one agent, which I knew that they knew that it was false, but one agent who took me on. I probably did 300 auditions where I was told I should look for a different profession. I'm no good. They realized that my dad was an actor, but I don't have what he has. And I think it gave me more incentive. And then I walked into the Goonies audition, and I was just at the right place at the right time.
What did they see? What did you bring that day that you hadn't brought before?
Well, I mean, listen, now that I direct and now that I've done a lot of plays and all that kind of stuff, I realized that I just probably looked similar to Sean Astin, and therefore I just fit the bill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like I could say a couple of lines without sounding like a total schmo. And they were like, let's use this kid. He's jockey looking, he's just right. He's the right age. And then it turns out that it was something that I was very, very interested in. And I would read books when we were doing the Goonies, like Stanislavski or Grotowski or Antonin Artaud. And then I would want to talk to Spielberg and Donner about what was behind each scene. And they had no interest.
Yeah, it's funny
interest.
Because reading your book,
pretentious
it's like
little kid.
You're on or off, but even when you're off, you're on. Do you know what I mean by that?
No.
So because you're clearly...
I was always on. It's just that one was negative and one was positive.
Well, or one was like working and one was like experiencing or experimenting. Yeah. And they both feed into each other in the end. And if you can walk that tightrope, it's great. It's when you fall off it or you can't anymore or there's no safety net that you get into trouble, which happened a few times. Tell us about out Nick Nolting... him, and also screaming after Philip Seymour Hoffman on a New York street and him wondering...
It's awful. I still think about it. The big thing, and not to be depressive, but, Phil, I only knew Phil sober.
Right.
Phil very, very early in his career. So I used to do plays in Rochester, New York, and this really kind of small, rotund woman would come up and she'd say, God, I really love you as an actor. You're a really good actor. I love that play or whatever. My son's going to be an actor. He just went to New York City. I'm like, oh, really? What's his name? She goes, Phil. And I was like, oh, good luck to Phil. Yeah. And it turns out that Phil turned out to be one of the greatest actors that ever lived. Literally, contemporarily for sure.
In a way.
He is. That's what he was. So I saw him on the street. I was not well. I had just gotten into kind of a row with my then wife, or the mother of my kid, my first kid. And I saw Nick Nolte on the street, who looked at me just kind of laughingly. I remember he chuckled. I locked eyes with him. He didn't know who I was. I knew who he was. Yeah. And he kind of looked at me like, get ready, kid. This is a life of chaos. Get ready, you know. And then I saw Philip Seymour Hoffman, and he didn't want to see me. And I was like, Phil, you're doing so well. It's amazing. And he was like, yeah, hi, Josh. You know that thing when you just like, it's like you smell?
He was sober at the time, wasn't he?
He was.
And he was sober for a long, long time.
22 years.
Long time.
Yeah, man.
All right, let's go to you being brilliant, because there's loads of like hiatus and this, that, and the other, and acting and not acting, and then trading these stocks for 3 years, which I still want to hear about. Yeah. And then there's you being amazing in Milk and winning the New York Critics' Choice Award for Best Supporting Actor, and then you being introduced on stage in New York in front of all the people who voted for you in this amazing film. Yeah. And redemption is yours to be had. All you have to do is say thank you. You win this award, and you get up and do what instead?
It was an opportunity for me to express my anti-Hollywood intentions. Yeah. I'm not on that. There's a line that I say in there about my mom. I was on a leash of the whims of my mother. And I was not going to be on the leash of the whims of Hollywood in my mind.
Although you did have second thoughts, because you'd written this speech and you had it and you looked at it and you thought, do I read this out?
Because when you do something and you're trying to get better, you're trying to increase your skill set on something. Yeah. And you've been doing it for 22 years and then nobody cares. And then finally, this whole like gaggle of people turn around and they go, you're amazing. Yeah. Like, thank you for being you.
We now have decided that you're amazing.
Exactly. And it was, and I think fueled by alcohol, I was like, you're not gonna determine my state of mind. Right, so I turned around and
you stood up there and you basically verbally machine gunned the room.
I did, but in such a cringy way. It's like I machine gunned with slime.
So what happened?
You know what I mean?
And your publicist literally held their head in their hands and said, "Oh God!" And Sean was like, Sean was polite. And
Sean was very sweet. Yeah. Sean never said anything negative about it, which
he probably understood where you were coming from.
Sean was such an interesting relationship because Sean was always incredibly supportive, no matter what I did. And I ended up later on, I think it was the next year, I contracted Bell's palsy. I had horrible Bell's palsy for like 8 weeks. I was just about to do W with Oliver Stone, and Sean was the person who he would make me laugh. I mean, when you have Bell's palsy, half of your face is totally paralyzed. And he was a great support during that time.
W, right? So I watched the trailer for W last night because I got really excited.
Did you ever see it?
No, I never saw it. Yeah. So I'm going to watch it this weekend. My wife Tash and I said, we'll watch this on Friday, Saturday.
That's interesting.
On Rotten Tomatoes, it doesn't do that well. By the way, Rotten Tomatoes, schmartos, right?
No, but whatever.
Yeah.
I mean...
But from the trailer, it looks amazing. Oliver Stone, legend, obviously. He came to find you. You were his man. He wanted you for this role. Yeah. The trailer looks great. I thought the film did really well. Am I right or am I wrong? Or?
It's not that the film, you mean financially well?
Just generally,
I think it was appreciated more later. Sebastian Stan just did the movie on Trump where he played Trump.
It reminded me of that.
And he called me before and he was like, what, I'm scared and what you can tell, which I get because it's the only, when I did W, it was the only time anybody had ever done anything like that with a sitting president. Right. They've done it since. They did it with the Queen. They did it with all that. Yeah. But I remember Oliver wrote something that was very heavy hitting in the beginning, and I said, but this is obvious. Like you can watch CNN. Yes. And you can watch Bush be slammed again and again and again. What if we get into his life? What if we get into his drinking? Get into the fact that he was the black sheep of the family and he wasn't the one that was supposed to succeed. It was supposed to be the brother. That's more interesting to me. Yeah. More dynamic.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it this weekend.
Okay.
It's great.
Good.
Right. Sobering up. You were stabbed. It was horrific. You've seen people, it's all in the book. It's an amazing book. This book is amazing. Thanks. You sobered up, how many years ago? 11 years ago?
I didn't get sober. I didn't get sober because of the stabbing,
no, I know,
by the way. But it was long after that.
But that is a horrific story. Yes. Was that your rock bottom?
That was a horrific story, but there's this thing that I used to do. It was, in AA, they say, I finally earned my seat, or I hit rock bottom. I was at the bottom at 15.
Yeah.
I was doing things at 15 that were very similar to that. So when you get stabbed in Costa Rica and you go, that's finally, okay, now I've hit this place.
Yeah.
There was nothing negative in my life that I'd ever hit. We used to call it a Tuesday. They go, oh, is that where you hit rock bottom? I go, no, man, that was a Tuesday. It was normal. It was a positive that finally threw me into sobriety.
Tuesday gets all the...
I know, Tuesday gets all the
We love
crap.
Tuesdays. We absolutely adore Tuesdays. And it was because you were stabbed in your belly button that you survived. Is that right?
Yeah, it was directly in my belly button. I don't know how that happened.
And why would that stop you from...
Because the umbilical ligament is the strongest ligament in your entire body.
Right.
And it stopped the knife enough. It slowed the knife down enough where it didn't mess with my insides.
See, your book is full of that. I mean, who doesn't pay attention when they get stabbed? But the fact you've almost become a student of that. You take on board a lot of things that you experience, and as much as more than an observer, you definitely learn from them, and you take them with you, and then you tell those stories to hopefully enlighten other people. Yeah. You talk about boxing, and you talk about UFC, and your Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and you're a good friend of Mike Tyson. Let's talk about Mike Tyson for a bit.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, weekend and a half ago now, you saw that fight. Yeah. How well do you know Mike?
I knew Mike because I met Mike backstage in the green room when I went to a boxing match of Julio Cesar Chavez, and it was down in the green room was Mike at 20. He had just become world champion, and Muhammad Ali was down there, and that was a moment. I don't even think I write about that. I made Muhammad Ali laugh, which was one of the great moments.
I mean,
of my
you
life.
have met some people. We haven't even touched upon when you were 8, hanging out with Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings, and
that's my whole childhood. I mean, that's literally, people, because they assume because my dad's an actor, my mom moved us away from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
We lived in horse country that's now considered wine country, Paso Robles, but back then it was farming and horse country, and it was 4 hours away from Los Angeles. So, but she loved, Johnny Cash would be there at some point, or Waylon Jennings would be there, or, I don't know who else was there. Johnny, whatever. There was all of them.
Oh, I mean, what a life, and you're still only 56, and you're at the peak of many of your powers now, and as extraordinary and as exciting and as dynamic as drinking and taking drugs and doing all that stuff may be, it doesn't hold a torch to the magic of sobriety. I don't think, because I don't drink anymore now.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I'm only 18 months in, but
whatever.
A different world. A different world.
Yeah.
By stopping one thing, you get so many things back.
Yeah.
Isn't it extraordinary that some of us who love life so much hold a knife to its throat, and we don't know why we do that? Is it because we don't ever want to face the fact that one day we're going to lose it? What is that about people like us?
It's very well put. You hold a knife to its throat. It's great. To me, there's this idea of sobriety that you get caught in this I don't know, hamster wheel of, if I quit drinking, then I'm going to be imprisoned by this thing called sobriety, which is a bunch of people sitting around a table being really boring, which exists. And by the way, there are sober people that aren't cool people. So there are people who represent sobriety where you go, why would I want to do that? So my whole thing, and I've said it before, but my whole thing was I'd been sober. I'd been sober at 19. I was looking at prison time. I had done some things. And so I got sober for 3.5 years. Then I got sober for 5 years at one point. I was like, but it always represented that you were taking my fun away from me.
Yeah.
And then something happened at 45 where I said, I will actively pursue on a daily basis a better day than my greatest romance of what drinking was.
Yeah.
And that's when it all changed.
Yeah.
I was like, I can be more punk rock sober than I ever was as a drinker.
Yeah. And you can keep it going as well.
Yeah,
that's the thing. How much, what was the best price you thought you might be able to get a Russian submarine for?
Russian submarine. That was, that's good, man. Nobody's ever brought that up. I would sit there in front of the Coens because they wouldn't talk. They never talk.
This is the Coen brothers.
The Coen brothers, and I would sit there and we'd be waiting, to do a take of something, of the 3 movies, one of the 3 movies that I did with them. And I would just get bored. So, the worst thing you could do on a set is say, hey, guys, I don't mean to be inappropriate here, but I have a story I want to do with you. You know what I mean? And they go, oh, God. And you'd hear this grumbling. Yeah. And I would go off on many tangents. And ironically, they did a movie, and then in the movie, there was a Russian submarine. So did that come from that? Do they owe me money?
Yeah.
I don't know.
When you were writing, because you said it's a sort of Russian subversion of Fargo.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you did write some of it, didn't you? Mm-mm. No, you didn't.
No,
it was just in there.
Yeah, it was like my resume. It was 100%,
too.
highfalutin, 100% false, just filling in air, man.
All right. So you're now married again. You're happily married.
Yeah.
Things are sweet.
Yeah.
Out of 10, how many are you now today sitting here?
Out of 10, I can say 10 because it's not that life is so smooth and perfect and all that. Life is life.
Yeah.
Life is tough. Life fluctuates.
Yeah, and then?
I'm just malleable, man.
Yeah.
You know, I like it. I like being here. Do I feel like I'm, swathed in a second chance kind of thing? A little bit. I feel like I'm on, borrowed time or extended time.
Owing time.
Yeah, man. I'm lucky. I'm lucky to be here. A lot of other things. It could have gone much worse. The stabbing could have been in a different place. The accident could have happened.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So people, why do you write a book like this now? Because I feel like it.
Yeah.
I do that instead of getting a Porsche. I could get a midlife crisis Porsche, a Ferrari, or a Lamborghini.
You need to stop there. So you're
You might
50,
have one of those.
You're 56. Anyway, you're 56. Your mum was 55 when she passed. Yeah. What would you say to her now if you could meet up with her again? What do you say to her now in your prayers?
Oh, I appreciate you. That's what I do. There's nothing about this book, and I look back on it, not that it was ever intended, but I don't feel victimized at all. When I was talking to Howard Stern, Howard took it very personally. He took this book very personally. And he was like, and he obviously started talking about his mother. And that's the greatest compliment of this book, is that people personalize it and they go, I responded to this story. I responded to this thing. Or I love that you got sober. I love your relationship with your kids. Or I love that you were out there doing this thing and almost not like a death wish, but that you were living life as in high of an octane as you could possibly live it. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think I would look back on my mom. I wish she was still around. I was 55 when I wrote the book, and I don't know if that was an accident or not. It was just revealed to me. But the fact that she died as young as I feel is amazing.
All right. We're out of time. Great to meet you.
All right, man.
I was
Nice
really
to
looking
meet
forward
you.
to meeting you. The book is out now, and it is a memoir like no other. Josh Brolin from Under the Truck. Goodbye. See you tomorrow, everyone. Bye.
Later.